Good afternoon. I'm Ron Flagg, president of the Legal Services Corporation, and I want to thank all of you for being here today and more importantly, for the work that you do every day to help this great community. I want to thank Antonia and Isela for their remarks. They've set the table quite effectively for the conversation we're about to have. In talking, Antonia referred to Los Angeles as the capital of homelessness, and we've talked a lot the last couple days at our board meeting about evictions and homelessness and the importance of collaboration, whether we're dealing with disasters or the opioid epidemic, or as we're talking about today, evictions and homelessness. And it's clear that given the daunting size of the issues here and throughout the country, collaboration is a key. Today, across the country and here in Los Angeles, we face what obviously is an urgent and dire situation. With the termination of the pandemic protections for tenants, the eviction tsunami, which we feared really from the outset of the pandemic, is now upon us. The rental assistance and moratorium on evictions for non-payment of rent ended here in Los Angeles later than it did in many other places. It ended in March of this year. Rental debts were due as of August 1st for renters in the city of Los Angeles. And let me share some statistics, which for Angelenos probably will not be startling, but at least to my eyes and ears are quite remarkable. From February through August of this year, approximately 50,000 eviction notices were filed by landlords in the city of Los Angeles. 50,000. That would be 10% of the population of Washington, D.C. And of course, with evictions rising, we've seen an increase in homelessness. The two are connected. Data released in June of this year showed a 9% rise in homelessness on any given night, to the point that in Los Angeles County, on average, over 75,000 people experience homelessness on a given night. And there's been a 10% rise in the city of Los Angeles, obviously the largest component of Los Angeles County. But just in the city of Los Angeles alone on a given night, there's an estimated over 46,000 people experiencing homelessness. Of course, Los Angeles is not the only American city to struggle with housing shortages and housing affordability and homelessness. But certainly the population and the numbers that I've just quoted to my Eastern ears and experience are quite startling. I was startled by the fact that 30% of the people experiencing homelessness in the United States are in California. Now, obviously, it's not because you're unique in that people want to come to California for lots of attractive reasons, and so you've gotten more than your share of people who are experiencing homelessness. I do want to quote from the New York Times because it's a good segue to what we're going to be talking about. After talking about these things, it says, Los Angeles is a kind of large-scale test case for which solutions work and which solutions don't. And that's where today's panel comes in. We're going to explore how local collaboration is actually effectively helping low-income and historically marginalized Angelenos exercise their rights and stay housed. And our panel really, I think, illustrates some solutions that do work. We just need more resources and more help. But let me, without further ado, introduce them, starting with Cynthia Luna to my immediate left, who is the supervising attorney, Self-Help Legal Access Centers, part of Neighborhood Legal Services of Los Angeles County. Next to her is Andrea Martinez, supervising attorney of the Schreiber Housing Project, part of the Neighborhood Legal Services of Los Angeles County. Next to her is Alma Saeed, Vice President of Public Partnerships at Liberty Hill Foundation. Next to Alma is Jeffrey Uno, Managing Attorney, Eviction Defense Center with LAFLA. And next to Jeff is Erica Ettinger, Senior Attorney, Systemic Impact Unit of Community Legal Aid of Southern California. And at the end of the table, if I've got it right, Monica Marr is our Director of Pro Bono for Community Legal Aid Southern California. Again, thank you for all of you being here. For starters, I'd like each of you to just briefly, in a sentence or so, share the window on evictions and homelessness that you bring to the conversation. And let's start with Erica.
Hello, everyone. It's an honor to be here today. In my work, I try to identify problems that are facing our client community, and then I work to try to find solutions that really maximize the impact we can have and the resources of our organization.
Monica?
Hello, everyone. In my work as a pro bono director, I work to find creative and innovative solutions to helping folks avoid eviction through pro bono work in 2 counties and overcome the barrier of not only traffic but distance for those volunteers to help our community members.
Jeff?
My name is Jeffrey Uno. I'm the Managing Attorney of the Eviction Defense Center at the Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles, LAFLA. I oversee our eviction defense and homelessness prevention team. We have about 45 or so staffers, all working out of the 6 courthouses in the county.
Thank you. Almas?
Hi, everyone. I'm sure you're like, why is there a foundation at an LSC accessing justice event? I understand it's a reasonable question. So we, in partnership with many of you, and it's so good to see so many folks, and primarily with LAFLA's team, administer something called Stay Housed LA. It is the largest eviction prevention and defense program now in the country. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more.
Thank you. And Andrea?
So my vantage point is a little bit different. I'm just a short walk away down here at the Stanley Moss Courthouse, which is the largest trial court in the nation. It's also one of the busiest. It's also the home to 25% of the county's eviction filings. I also call it the Thunderdome. Our placement there downtown gives us an eyes on the ground in terms of what is happening. We're able to see the devastation of the justice gap. So when folks have to go through this lightning fast process alone, we're able to see what happens when they're doing it in the dark. But we can also see the way the scales of justice tip back when both sides are represented, or at least at a minimum are empowered to represent themselves through access to critical service like information and resources.
Thank you. And Cynthia?
Hi, everyone. So for me and our partners who run the self-help centers, Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles, California, Community Legal Aid SoCal, and the court, we are often the starting point for individuals facing different types of legal issues, but more concerning and more recently has been the housing crisis. We see the challenges that they face across our extremely diverse and spread out county. So oftentimes we are the start and their introduction to legal services.
Well, you're a good person to start with, Cynthia, and let's stick with you. On Mayor Karen Bass's first day on the job, she declared homelessness an emergency. Eviction court, in a lot of ways, is the front lines of the homelessness crisis, and you oversee self-help legal access centers in courthouses across Los Angeles County where people are trying to halt an eviction or seeking help. For those of us in the audience who are not familiar with those courthouses, what do you see? What would we see if we were there?
I think you need to take a step back and think of the person who's coming in and who is first being introduced to evictions. Majority of the population, they don't know the terminology of a lawful detainer. They don't know what an eviction is. They don't know what a notice means. So oftentimes they're coming in scared with misconceptions, with rumors, my neighbor said this, my landlord told me this, and they may get a notice, they may get a courtesy letter from the court, and they're just confused and scared because it's extremely frightening for someone who is concerned that they may not have a place to live in 3 days, because that's what they think a 3-day notice is. or they think that their sheriff is going to come and lock them out within a few days. So oftentimes they come to the courthouse, and fortunately, because the self-help centers have been there for such a long time, they have been a trusted resource in the community, and they know it's a place where they can come and ask questions. So the most important thing consistently throughout their entire experience is just education, educating the community, triaging their situations, figuring out where they are, and hopefully, because the vast majority of them qualify for legal aid, is connecting them to all these great programs that exist. Many of the times they didn't even know that it existed. Many were fearful that they would have to face eviction and go to court against, attorneys and landlords by themselves. But it brings them a sense of relief to know where they are. A lot of the times we're able to educate them and assist them with their answers and then connect them to additional resources. And we've been that safety net for over 20 years and continue to be that safety net, because the reality is there's such a high demand, and especially with the pandemic, it only increased significantly the demand for housing help that is needed out there, that for some, unfortunately, they won't get the opportunity to get the additional legal advice and representation that a lot of these services can provide. But honestly, the relief that you see in people's faces just by better understanding their situations empowers many of them. Empowers them to represent themselves, empowers them to face the challenges that they're facing, and many of them successfully do it on their own, which is very inspiring.
Thank you for reminding us to think of the individual faces of these people. When I talk about 50,000 people getting eviction notices or 75,000 people each night experiencing homelessness, we can sometimes be numbed by those numbers and forget about that each one of those people is really facing an almost indescribable tragedy, and to be reminded of that is, I think, really important. Jeff, let's talk to you or hear from you. We talked about the 50,000 eviction notices, and if we want to do something about homelessness, one component of this multi-pronged approach must involve preventing people from losing their homes in the first place. And LAFLA, along with other legal service providers, social service providers, are part of citywide initiatives. Two of them are We Are LA and Stay Housed LA. We've heard about both of them throughout the day, and they are designed to help tenants navigate and prevent eviction. Can you tell us more about those efforts, what benefits they're having, both to the justice system and to the legal aid community, most importantly, the people they're designed to serve?
Yes, thank you, Ron. So Stay Housed LA is a collaborative of about 10 legal service providers and over a dozen community-based organizations, right, out in the community, supporting and helping each other, right, in this endeavor. LAFLA has the privilege to be the lead agency along with our allies at Liberty Hill to help us administer things through the program. It arose really out of advocacy efforts, this program beginning in about 2018, where there was a lot of push towards a renter's right to counsel in Los Angeles County. Back then, almost a dream, to be completely honest with you folks who have probably been there and heard of it, in this room. But we came to closer and closer to a reality, right? Through the Stay Housed LA CBOs, we provide our outreach to the tenants via phone, text, and in person. They provide those, very important tenant navigations to help tenants through their housing crisis. Of course, in tandem, like I said, with, the legal services providers, right? About, getting out there for the workshops about the tenants' rights, and even some of these clinics, right, on a one-to-one basis to give more information to those folks out there, right? And again, it just doesn't stop there, right? The LSPs provide full scope, right, eviction defense services, right, for those who qualify, along with limited scope proper assistance, again with, those workshop and clinics. And of course, our case management services, right, to support the clients with some of the non-legal things out there. What do you mean? Rental assistance, housing navigation, those types of critical services that, to be completely honest with you, they drive legal, right? Because you have money to perhaps work with a landlord, right, in order to get the rent paid and so forth. So as a business decision, right, it makes sense. Things like that are all part of the Stay Housed LA funding. We are happy to announce that over the next 2023-24 cycle, $31 million have been allocated by the city and county. And of course, we have additional funds from federal, state, and local funding, and including private foundation funding, right, in this endeavor to provide a right to counsel for all the tenants who are eligible, again, completely for free, right? Now, this doesn't happen overnight, obviously, to provide all of this legal representation to all the tenants out there. We are on a 6-year phase-in plan, right, over the next 6 years to bring in about 400 attorneys, again, to meet this need. So again, with collaboration being the key, we have to work on an attorney pipeline to provide, right, the new folks, the new attorneys, the new staffers, law students, and so forth through stipends and graduate fellowships, right, so that we can go ahead and provide these services. Currently this year, we are proud to announce that we have 20 postgraduate fellows who just joined us this last fall, who are waiting for bar results in a little over a month. So fingers crossed for them that they come in, right? Yes, give our hand to our postgraduate fellows. Will hopefully be joining us in what we call the fight, right? But in the end though, right, again, I can't stress this enough, and I think this is the theme, is collaboration is key. We are privileged to have this opportunity to bring these much needed services to the tenants in the County of Los Angeles, but it will still continue to be a fight, to be a challenge, right? To bring these folks in, to have them hired and trained and ready to go ahead and take on this remarkable work. So we're thrilled at the variety of collaborative and creative thinking that we have received and the support from the Mayor's Fund, We Are LA, and so forth in order to get us to that goal. Thank you.
Thank you. Almas, I had no doubt as to why we should have invited you, and I'm glad you're here. In July, the County Board of Supervisors unanimously passed a motion to take the first step toward creating a program that would provide free attorneys to tenants in danger of losing their homes in the unincorporated areas within LA County. And this complements the protections enacted by the LA City Council as well as Stay Housed LA, which Jeff just described. Now, that sort of policy win doesn't just transpire overnight or through osmosis, and it involves advocacy by local advocates and community organizations like those supported by your program, Liberty Hill Foundation. Can you tell us about how community organizing and activism is related to these developments and really undergirds them, and what other policy change momentum is building?
Oh yeah, my absolute favorite topic. So I am an eviction attorney by training, both on the defense side and in terms of habitability cases. I've actually worked for most of the organizations in this room. First as a Shriver attorney, which you're going to hear about in a minute if you're not familiar with that program, and more recently as a Stay Housed LA attorney. In between, I did other things. I learned how to be a community organizer because I went to an amazing law school in LA called UCLA. I did not learn how to organize a community to advocate and ensure that structural change happened for the betterment of a community. So what do I mean by that? Lawyers are often taught to organize for a particular case. It's important work, especially if you have a particular end. Community organizing is a little bit different. We go out into the community, we ensure that we get people to a table to understand both what their rights are, what changes they want to see that are policy driven and structural. That's what makes Stay Housed LA super unique. The community-based organizations that are a part of the total program, they're not services-driven organizations. They are purposefully grassroots, often civil rights organizations, some of which didn't know shit about housing before they were invited to be a part of Stay Housed LA. Excuse my language. I know where I am. The community-based organizations that partner with LSPs in LA are really trying to make a difference and a dent in what you heard from Isela in particular about preservation and protection, especially those two things, but also making production accessible in communities where housing is just really not available or incredibly expensive. So the 12 organizations that work with Stay Housed LA are all over LA County. They are paired with an LSP, but that's not why they're in the program. They're in the program to ensure that they are talking to community, building their lists, activating folks around critical policy issues that will eventually be very critical to a lawyer's work with a client. But laws are only as good as people knowing that they exist, knowing that they are protected. And that is what makes Stay Housed LA so incredibly unique, and why I'm in this kind of weird role in administering it. So the Right to Counsel coalition, the power behind it, was initially envisioned by community-based organizations that are led by tenant leaders who were deeply impacted by housing instability, by displacement, by gentrification, by the rapidly rising costs of housing in a city that is market-driven, where policy choices are often made because of the market and often because of a real estate lobby that is louder than our clients and the people that we work with and represent. And that inequity drives the law. We know that. That's not hopefully controversial. If it is, then you can talk to Isela and I after this panel. Housing is a human right. I hope that people are comfortable with that statement. I am in spaces where people are really not. So how we ensure that narrative and kind of communications change is also a critical part of how we are talking about Stay Housed in the community. So what do the CBOs do? The CBOs do phone banking, texting, they go door to door. That's stuff that canvassers are used to. Like the organizations that are part of Stay Housed LA have always done that. Here's what they've had to become experts in the last 4 years. Running Know Your Rights workshops in partnership with many of you, many of the LSPs in LA County, learning how to work with individual people to navigate them through the most complex housing system, I would argue, in the country at the moment, largely because of a lack of housing and because of its expense. They also run clinics. Some of you staff those clinics. I'm calling you like, please come Saturday. Roberta, you know what I'm talking about. And they are all-day clinics where the organizers ensure people come into the room, they run these workshops, and then they see lawyers at the end. The impact of this work as we enter our 4th year is astounding because of a combination of everything from website ads, in some instances where we got support for this, billboards, as well as like phone banking and texting. We've reached 1.1 million people through the public awareness campaign alone. That is astounding. It is a publicly invested program. Like, we use public dollars to do this. There are tons of restrictions to these dollars. But to have 1.1 million people who are like aware of the program, or there's been some communication with them, is unprecedented. 200,000 people have gone through Know Your Rights workshops. Here's why this is really important. Sometimes in the workshops, we're able to stem the flow to the lawyers themselves, right? Like, we can maybe address something through the Know Your Rights piece or through the tenant navigation piece. In that sense, we have a lot in common with the self-help programs that you're hearing about on this panel. We do not do this work alone. Look at the size of this panel. It is taking everyone in this room to stem the tide of the emergency that we're dealing with, not just in the city of LA, but in the entire county. 3 weeks ago, I ran a clinic in the Antelope Valley. People who came to the clinic did not even know that unincorporated LA had any tenant protection at all. it's a different moment, and I'm hopeful that we can rise to meet the occasion. I'm sure there's a lot more that I was supposed to say. 4 minutes is short.
Yeah, I told you it was a good thing she was here. Andrea, Stay Housed LA is certainly notable for the number of stakeholders at the table, but it's not the first time that legal aid groups in Los Angeles County have collaborated on housing instability and eviction prevention. Can you tell us more about collaboration through the lens of the Shriver housing project, and what is the project and what has its impact been? Because I think you have some data about the effect of your program on keeping people in their homes.
So I am Andrea Martinez again, and I'm the supervising attorney for Shriver, but I am going to take you on a little historical journey real quick and tell you where we came from and what we come about. So the Sargent Shriver Civil Counsel Act was signed by the governor back in 2009, right? And it was to expand access to attorneys where basic human rights were at risk, so things like housing, right? So NLSLA partnered with 3 other agencies, 3 prominent agencies of Los Angeles County: Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles, Public Counsel, and Inner City Law Center, to put together a program. And it was going to be a housing and eviction defense program based out of the Stanley Moss Courthouse. And it was going to be the largest of these 7 pilot programs. And by the way, today we're still the largest of more than 7, but we're still the largest. So there was one key idea that was behind this unparalleled collaboration, right, in eviction defense. It was to build a program that provides a model for comprehensive, high-quality services for low-income litigants that are at risk of losing their housing, right? So people on the verge of homelessness, right, which is the crisis that we're talking about now. Our project was transformative in what it was able to achieve, not just only as a collaboration, but just in terms of what it was able to do with this pilot program, right? The data, which they collect a ton of it, this was just a glorified science project to a certain extent. And it was supposed to sunset, the funding was supposed to sunset after a few years, right? But they determined from the numbers what we already knew to be true, which was when both sides are represented, the results tend to be a little bit different and things kind of even out, right? So because we had collected so much data, because we had seen so many people, because we were able to put the proof right in front of them, the governor made this program permanent, and it still funds us now and funds many more other programs throughout the state. Again, this was a step towards right to counsel. It's a step towards other large-scale collaborations like the Mammoth, which is Stay Housed LA, right? Shriver was that first big step, not only to prove to funders that these types of collaborations could work, but also just like you do in sports, right? Sometimes you got to learn to win. So it was teaching the agencies as well that this kind of thing in eviction defense could be possible and be successful. The original model focused on solely on representation, right? Getting people connected with an attorney and having them represented in their case. But we quickly realized that that wasn't going to have the big impact that we needed it to have, right? For multiple reasons. So we pivoted. We used the information and the tools and the lessons that we had learned 20 years before with self-help legal access centers. And we opened a housing-focused self-help center at the Stanley Moss Courthouse, right? Only housing, nothing else, just housing, right? By doing that, we're able to cast a wide net, right? We can connect and touch more people, and by doing so, just on the representation level, we're able to then find more of those individuals that qualify for our services and get them connected with attorneys so they can get that assistance that they greatly need. On the other side of that, though, is the reality that we all know to be true. You can't take every kitten home, right? There is more need than there is, even though I really try, guys, right? I really do. There's more, right? There's more need than there is resources available to deal with that right now, right? And maybe that won't be the reality in the future, but right now that's exactly where we are, and that's exactly where we were then. So a self-help center allows us to still assist people, and why do we go to Stanley Moss? Because that's where the people are, right? That's where it's happening at. So we're able to assist them at least with something, because it's better to give somebody a flashlight in the dark to kind of go through the process and wonder and figure it out than it is to have them get nothing at all and then have to try and do this alone, right? So the self-help center allows us to do kind of both things. So I see our program as somewhat of a hybrid, right? Because we're not just a self-help center And we're not just representation, right? We do both. And they complement each other in a way that allows us to make a bigger impact on the community and a bigger impact in this fight. Again, another key component to our project, which isn't, again, the collaboration that we have with the partners is huge because they allows us to take from them expertise and overcome things like conflict. There's great strength with teaming up with the legal service providers that we have teamed up with, right? But it's also our partnership with the court, right? And it goes beyond just us being placed within Stanley Moss Courthouse. We're more than just a tenant there, right? I'm more than just somebody that's annoyingly down the hallway from small claims that has people kind of spilling into their room, right? Our partnership with them actually works both ways. They give us access that allows us to effectively and efficiently assist our litigants in an area of law where every minute can count sometimes, right? So not only that, the information flows back and forth. And so we're able to point out to them blind spots that they might not be aware of, right? Because of our placement on the ground, because of our work both in the courtrooms with the partner agencies and our own full scope attorneys, and our placement in the self-help center, we're able to provide them with that insight that they might not realize until maybe a little problem becomes a huge problem for them down the road, right? And what that ultimately does, that flow of information back and forth, allows them to make adjustments to their operations and also will improve those services that they provide to people, ultimately improving access to the courts that folks have, right? So again, it's not just the collaboration that we have with the legal service providers, it's also that key component of that partnership that we have with the court. Shriver's model of large-scale collaboration in eviction defense opened the door for other programs, like I said, right? Programs like Stay Housed LA. But we're not, to say that we are the first major collaboration would be false, right? We also stand on the shoulders of giants. There were programs that came before us that were other collaborations, maybe in other areas, like 20 years ago with the self-help legal access centers, right? Prior to Shriver, there was HRHP, which I can never remember what their acronym means, but it was homeless prevention and rapid rehousing, I believe. But it was super innovative because it included social workers that were a part of it. That was something new for that type as well, right? So all of these pieces, all of this stuff along the way, we had lessons learned and innovations and things that we were able to take as Shriver and build upon and are continuing to do so, right? We're still learning lessons today that we're sharing amongst each other. NLS LA, as the lead of Shriver, has LAFLA as a partner, which is also the lead of Stay Housed LA, right? We're able to share that information and best practices and what's happening on the ground and make those adjustments. And so you don't have to always reinvent the wheel, right? Or figure out that the square wheel doesn't work, right? Because somebody can already tell you that, hey, this didn't really work out for us. And so you're able to take that, improve upon it, and then grow it going forward, right? There are programs that have been yet to be created that will take what we have learned and what we have done and what they're doing now and what we're doing now and what other people are doing. They're going to put their own spin on it and they're going to make it work for them. And it's going to be just another way to come at this problem. And I think that's going to be a really key component as we move forward, is to look to find ways to work together, not just program to program, right? Because we've figured that out, like legal service provider to legal service provider, community-based organization, including that. Now we have to think bigger, right? Because this problem is so big that it's not going to be something that one agency or one program, no matter how large, is going to be able to tackle. So how do we now fill in those gaps between and complement each other between large-scale collaboration and large-scale collaboration, right? Like Shriver just recently started collaborating with Stay Housed LA on certain things because there are folks that will come to us that won't qualify for Shriver because of our requirements. Everybody is familiar with all of their requirements and their restraints, right? But I don't want to just turn them away. They still qualify for Stay Housed LA. So I want to make sure that we get them connected over there to Stay Housed LA. And that's going to be like that next key component for everybody going forward is that type of collaboration. Taking those big networks that we've all gotten, the strength of the group, and just improving upon that and continuing to find these innovative solutions. Because honestly, that's the only way we're going to be able to do this is if we come at it from really all angles.
Thank you so much. Erica, we've heard a lot about really different sorts of efforts at helping individuals with getting counsel, self-help, a lot of different approaches. But another key component and another key role that legal aid programs and their partners play is seeing identifying case trends and then trying to resolve underlying systemic issues, and that's really your day job. How have you been able to strengthen tenant protections and reduce evictions, taking systemic approaches?
Thanks. As a as a senior attorney in the Systemic Impact Unit at Community Legal Aid SoCal, I work really closely with the subject matter experts at our organization, including eviction defense attorneys, to identify those case trends and problems that are facing our client community and try to devise solutions to those problems. So sometimes that requires taking an informal approach, such as negotiating or drafting a letter. Sometimes it requires litigation. We've had success, particularly in the eviction defense realm, of using the strategy of taking or defending an appeal, and then when the decision is favorable, seeking publication of that decision so that it can be relied on by other advocates in that space. We had a recent success out of the Appellate Division of the Orange County Superior Court that vindicated tenants' rights under the Tenant Protection Act, and we were able to get that decision published. And since then, our advocates have been able to rely on that decision to successfully defend against eviction in their cases. But in addition to our eviction defense work, we also try to address factors that contribute to eviction, including affordable housing and access to benefits. If somebody can't afford their rent, or if somebody suddenly loses their benefits because they're wrongfully terminated, it puts them at risk of eviction really fast. They get destabilized. So focusing on these factors are important. So just to touch a little bit on my affordable housing work, I know that it's not going to be any shock to anyone in this room that there's an affordability crisis in California when it comes to housing. California has passed a lot of laws that are aimed at trying to get at this problem. Some of these laws include laws that require local governments to plan for affordable housing in their local planning documents. And we know from our work that this is important. When local governments plan for affordable housing, more affordable housing gets built. But when they're not planning for it, less affordable housing gets built, and this puts people at risk of displacement and eviction and homelessness. So we've done a lot of advocacy in this space, including representing plaintiffs, representing interveners, and drafting amicus briefs. And we've been successful in getting these laws upheld and getting cities to come back into compliance with their legal obligations and plan for affordable housing. What has been critical to our success in this space has been our partnership with pro bono law firms, as well as with other legal aid associations in Orange County and in Los Angeles. Like I said, every city has to plan for this affordable housing in their local planning documents. And there's a lot of cities in Southern California. So by partnering together and sharing resources, sharing information, and the successful strategies, we've really been able to maximize the impact that we can have in this space.
Thanks so much. Monica, thanks for your patience. Right to counsel laws are great. The challenge often is to find enough counsel to staff those programs to fully support or fully meet the needs of LA County. You would need hundreds of additional lawyers, and we know how hard our grantees have to work to attract and retain great lawyers. But pro bono lawyers are one source of supplement to staff attorneys and are critical to reducing the number of evictions and judgments in the areas you serve in Southeast Los Angeles County and Orange County. How does your program work, and what lessons learned can you pass on to others?
Yeah. Hi. So Project Hope works by being completely remote. It's a completely remote eviction defense clinic where we complete answers to evictions, obviously. And it really grew out of the pandemic and a PBIF transformation grant. So kind of the culmination of these two things coming together really helped us think outside of the box. We had to come up with a new model to help our clients and help this tsunami that we knew was coming of evictions. So typically the model for pro bono work is we have our first level folks, all of our LSO folks, our staff attorneys doing answers and like the basic level of intake work. Then we place cases, right? We might call pro bono attorneys, ask them to take a case. Then the highest level would be like our, working with Erica's team and, finding a big firm to do co-counsel on impact litigation. And really during the pandemic, we kind of flipped this model. So we started asking attorneys, law students, folks that were recently barred to help us with that entry level, with which people weren't normally doing, like the work that our staff attorneys were doing day in and day out. And this kind of freed up our staff attorneys to actually represent on cases. So they were in court more. We have almost 90% of all of our UD answers completed by pro bono volunteers. So for us, that's huge. We have an extremely high number of almost everyone coming through this clinic. And then those cases can go back to case review, and our attorneys can kind of look at them and say, now that we have more capacity, which cases can we represent on? Which cases can we help with? And then sometimes these volunteer attorneys, can also work on the bigger cases, the higher impact, systemic cases. But we don't require that of them. They're able to come in and really do a short, limited scope kind of foray into pro bono work and see if it's right for them. So this model of kind of reversing it and allowing, our staff attorneys to get into court more and work directly with the clients where they really connect with them. All of us know that legal aid attorneys are great with clients, and sometimes they need to be there when the pro bono attorneys are also interacting to make it a really great experience. So this kind of takes that model and changes it just slightly and really works well. And we have, for us, different levels of engagement for pro bonos and for law students and other folks along the way. So having those different levels of engagement has really helped us come at the problem from multiple angles of having still our entry level and then, our co-counsel and folks that might be willing to go in and represent a case or take an appeal. And really what we're doing with this work is building a pipeline of attorneys. I heard my colleague Jeff talk about, Stay Housed LA. And so we have all this huge need and actually, funding to hire attorneys that don't yet exist. And so we really need to grow the pipeline of folks that are willing to do eviction defense work. And we do that by working with our partners from the law schools, bringing in law students to these clinics, exposing new attorneys, working with folks at law firms and other folks that maybe are looking to go out on their own and set up practice as independent attorney. They just might want to be a solo practitioner. They're ready to do that. This is a way they can learn how to do that, help us, and then go out into the world and also bring that knowledge to our community. So we're working on the pipeline, we're helping our clients and hopefully building a passion among folks to be able to see what it's like for someone to just live paycheck to paycheck and who these people really are. Because once I work with a lot of firm attorneys and I hear them say, wow, like I didn't realize how easy it was to become homeless, that someone can lose their home just based on any number of circumstances. And you always think about that. But when you're actually talking to someone on the phone, it can really hit home and build one more advocate for this work. Because I think that what all of our colleagues here today kind of touched on was that it takes a multi-pronged approach to solve this issue, and we're not going to do it overnight. So pulling in pro bono attorneys and pro bono law students and newly barred folks and sometimes even folks in other jurisdictions really can just help us in the meantime while we're working on all these systemic kind of ways to solve the problem and build housing. So that is what we're doing, and we're doing it in both counties. So the exciting part about this work is it's completely remote, which you all know is extremely important for people just to get from one place in LA to the other. I mean, it's just takes a long time to go down the street in downtown. And so this has been an approach that really draws in folks in a way that meets them where they're at and helps clients where they're at. I don't think for us, we see us going back to the way we used to do business. We're able to meet clients where they're at their jobs. They can walk out, take a phone call, work on their situation without having to take any time off work when they don't have time to take off work. So in addition to the pro bono attorneys, this is really client-centered, and that's what we're doing, and we hope that other regions can learn from it and will hopefully spread the model. So.
Thank you, Monica. So we've obviously covered an enormous amount of ground today, which is appropriate given the daunting nature of the problem we're trying to deal with. Speaking of daunting, I'd like each of you to take less than a minute and summarize one thing you'd like our audience to take away in dealing with this problem. Jeff, let's start with you.
Can't stress enough collaboration and creative thinking to help us address this problem on all levels, all spaces, all places, all ideas welcome, all collaboration welcome.
Almas?
1 minute. It's hard, and I'm detracting from my own time. So I think that ensuring that your practice or your institution is deeply connected to community in some way is something that I really can't emphasize enough. I wasn't taught this as a lawyer. I had to learn how to do it in the field. And I know now it's a different time because I'm an old lady. And there are spaces in law schools that are doing, relative to where I was, that are doing that. But one thing that I implore upon you, if you're not familiar with State House, is to really appreciate how unique this collaboration is. When I was in housing as a courtroom lawyer, it was very rare to sit in a planning space, in a strategy space with a local CBO. They might have asked me to staff a clinic or support on a case, but to sit and strategize on a different future for housing takes everyone in this room plus a bunch of people who are not here. So as an institution, I ask that you bring in, if not tenant voices, then a deep relationship with a community-based organization that's connected to folks on the ground.
Almas, I know old, and you're not old.
Well, every year that changes.
Let's see, Erica.
Well, I would stress, I think what's been a theme of this panel is that a multi-pronged and collaborative approach is critical in order to help people remain housed.
Monica?
I would say I love pipeline work. So the takeaway would be we need to focus on the pipeline of eviction defense attorneys. And, I'm proud to say that out of this clinic, we've hired 3 of our volunteers, and they're now housing attorneys practicing in our organization. And I actually see one more that's practicing with another organization, so I'll claim that person too, Roberta. So that's 4 in this room. And that's just out of the first 2 years of this clinic. So I think the pipeline is extremely important, and we can't forget about our colleagues at the law schools and law firms, and really just think about what Antonia said earlier about bringing in the private sector as well.
Cynthia, we haven't heard from you in about 40 minutes.
Please do not underestimate the power of education. Education for the community at large, but how education can really help the mental health of the individual. I remember months ago, as protections were winding down, a mom coming and being seriously concerned. Her concern was, can I safely take out my holiday decorations and decorate, or should I just keep them in storage because the sheriffs are going to come in a week? And just the relief in knowing how much time she had was just a burden off her shoulders. So education is key.
Thank you. Andrea, last word.
All right. Buckle up. So I think it's just going to kind of go back to the things that we've kind of talked about today, a lot of these same themes, right? Which, if you want to go fast, right, you go alone. If you want to go far, you have to go together. And I think that that's something that we have to keep in mind the entire time with whatever we're doing, right? That the only way forward through this thing is going to be together. Again, there is no one agency, one legal service provider, one program, one approach that is going to really be able to tackle this thing. It's just it's too big. The enemy is too dynamic, and it's too widespread, right? We're basically at a critical point where all hands are on deck, and it's going to take all of us. It's going to take everybody up here on this stage, all of their staff, and all of you out there, and people that are watching, and people that are not here, like Alma said. Right? It's going to take everybody, community-based service organizations, mental health service providers, cities, governments, funders, right, especially the funders. It's going to take all of that coming together and working to complement each other and not compete, right? And instead of focusing on building just a really awesome program, looking at the bigger problem that we need to try and solve, right? And what we need to do and what steps need to be taken in order for us to move the needle and continue to go forward. So, we got to come at this thing from all angles, and I think the only way you can do it is if we do it together, and it really is going to take all of us.
So please join me in thanking our panel.